just to start things out really quickly, let me put you in a hypothetical situation. If you fall down in a 100 feet deep hole, would you rather just stay down there or climb back up? If you have no tools or resources, would you rather stay down there or climb back up? Realistically, it'd be easier not to climb. I mean, what is the point of climbing when you know that eventually you might just fall back down to the bottom again? But what you, my fellow novice hole climbers, need to know is that when, not if, but when you make it to the surface again, you'll be so overjoyed that you even tried. So understand that not everyone is a professional hole climber at first. Understand that it's really hard to get better and to change yourself. Let me take you back to September of 2020 when I was first turning 13. I'll show you how I became a professional hole climber and how you can too. So when I was younger and when I was starting to go into my preteen years, I always heard the phrase, enjoy your youth. There's a potential problem with the phrase, enjoy your youth. I was a freshly minted 13-year-old, and the things I have been dreaming about since I was a preteen were about to be realized. I would be taken more seriously, starting now. I could get onto all the social media apps that I wanted without having to lie about my age. I considered myself an adult at this point. So the next day, I'm on my iPad, I sign up for whatever seems appealing to me, Discord, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. And things are going okay so far. I follow some people that I watched on YouTube, and I just scroll through whatever gets recommended to me. Until I scroll and see some inappropriate pictures of somebody. It made me uncomfortable. Shocking, I know. But when I went to the comments, I saw that everybody was talking about how this post should be taken down, how children could see this, and that it needs to be taken off immediately. And I go and I like all the comments that were saying that because I agree. But the problem with me doing that is that the algorithm recognized that I was interacting with this content. And because of that, it started recommending more inappropriate videos and pictures to me. And without me realizing it, it was spreading like a plague. It went onto all of my social media apps. And so because I saw more of this, the more I got used to it. And the more that I got used to it, the more that I started to wrongly seek it out. Time went by, and in the summer of 2021, I was at an all-time low. Life felt heavy, doing anything seemed so tiresome, and it took so much out of me just to exist. I felt like there was nothing specific for me to be sad about, and I was irrationally depressed all the time. And to make matters worse, I was not telling my parents anything about how I was feeling or what I was seeing. And so because of that heightened anxiety, isolation from COVID, and also just seeing all this content all the time, all of that added together is an absolute recipe for disaster. One night, my worst nightmare came true, and my parents looked through everything. They found out everything. They looked through my conversations, they saw the things that I was seeing on my social media feeds, and started to question it. They started to talk to me about it, which was super uncomfortable. They were asking me, why? Why would you let this get so bad, even if you knew it was bad? I got hit with this question, and I was speechless. I had no idea. I didn't understand why I let it get this bad. But at the end of that conversation, the thing that I remember is my parents telling me that things were gonna get better. Not back to normal, but better. That inspired a lot of hope in me, and I was ready to move on from this experience. So, yes, they found out, and yes, they had rules in place for me going forward, and then all was well, and I lived happily ever after. Not quite. At first, I was just sitting at the bottom of this pit, twiddling my thumbs, waiting for the motivation to climb again. It just wasn't happening. My parents kept checking in with me on my mental health, which were always the most uncomfortable conversations, and I felt like I wasn't making any progress. It felt like I was just sitting at the bottom and everything still felt so heavy. It felt like the second that I was out of the house and on my own, I was gonna stay stuck in this mental state for the rest of my life. Or at least it certainly felt like that for a while. You see, the reason why it felt like it was so difficult for me to climb back up again was because I was dealing with breaking bad habits and battling against biology. So my feelings of hopelessness and having depression and having anxiety, is not at all unique, and actually, it's almost expected in girls of that age. Written from the NIH, National Institute of Health, a government-owned health organization, they write that inside of the brain, adolescents go through huge changes, which, not new information. But what causes the influx of stress in female adolescents in particular is the increased estrogen production inside of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. That giant word gets shortened down to HPA. This three-organ system is the main body's regulator of stress and sleep. Corticotropin-releasing hormone, also known as CRH, is the main body's organizer of stress and sleep. So when female adolescents start producing more estrogen, the imbalance of hormones causes the system to go absolutely haywire, and it starts to become more sensitive. And so because of that, adolescent girls are more likely to experience depression and anxiety because of this. And with anyone that has some kind of run-in with an addiction, the first thing that gets asked is, why would you let this bad habit continue even if you knew it was bad? There are a lot of circumstances and a lot of situations that could be used to answer that. But when it comes down to the bare basics, addiction is when a really important part of your brain gets hijacked. So inside of the brain, there is a little part that sits there called the basal ganglia. The basal ganglia is our habit-making part of the brain. So when we complete tasks, it causes a large release of dopamine. And it could be anything that brings us happiness. It could be riding a bike, watching a movie, cooking your favorite food, eating your favorite food. And all of these things causes these releases of dopamine. And because of that, the brain connects the release of dopamine to this task and creates it into a habit. When we consume addictive substances, it causes our brain to be overstimulated and release a huge amount of dopamine, an abnormal amount of dopamine. But because the basal ganglia recognizes this release of dopamine, it connects that with consuming the addictive substance and turns that into a habit, unbeknownst to the fact that it's not a good thing. It doesn't matter if someone's consuming cereal or alcohol, it notices the good feeling that it gives you and turns it into a habit. It's when we get addicted to harmful habits instead of helpful habits that it becomes a dangerous situation. People think you're consciously making the decision to dig yourself deeper when really it's just the brain doing what it does best, repetition. Remember to treat addiction like it's a habit, not a real conscious decision that you make. NSFW content or sensitive content works in a really similar way to drugs. The BBFC, the British Board of Film Classification, writes that when someone watches this content and gets the high stimulation and high dopamine release from it, they will continue to seek out that high release of dopamine because it's addictive. And so just like with any other substance, because of the fact that you get exposed to this, the brain eventually gets used to it. It gets used to the stimulus, it gets used to the amount of dopamine that gets released. So the severity and the intake of that content gets heightened upon usage, so that way you can get back that large reaction to it. And in adolescence, it's particularly worse for them. And the reason why is because, number one, it's a lot more accessible than drugs and alcohol. And number two, most adolescent people will use this type of content to learn from it if there's no proper education for them. And so because of that, the way they go about personal relationships changes. The way they see the world changes. There's development of unrealistic expectations, and those expectations could affect the relationships that they have in the long run. But it's a habit, and it's really hard to break habits. That's the thing. The brain is so much better equipped to commit habits to memory than it is to break them. But you gotta start somewhere. And personally, where I started was when I went back to in-person school, I joined activities and made new friends. A lot easier said than done, I understand that, because I went through an entire period of isolation without any social contact besides my parents. But they encouraged me to join as many activities as possible. So this constituted dance lessons, joining Science Olympiad, doing middle school theater, and also getting back to the activities that I love doing, like playing piano and drawing. And so because of the fact that I joined these activities, I surrounded myself with people that had similar interests to me. I was able to surround myself with people that would be there for me if I needed it. And so because of the fact that I made friends, and also joined these activities, I took the leap of faith to get better. And I noticed, just randomly out of the blue in freshman of high school, I realized I was happy. Not in the sense where people said I was happy so I was happy. I was genuinely happy because I had friends and I was doing productive things with my time. So to get started with the recovery process, you need to take that leap of faith, or otherwise it's just not going to happen. So when you get to the point in your life when you go through this experience, you change. And it stinks and it hurts that people aren't going to get that old version of you back. But the whole point of recovering from these traumatic experiences is that you're making a change to your life. You're making a change to yourself, your personality, and how you go about things. So, of course it's going to hurt, and of course you're going to miss how you were back then, and other people are going to miss how you were back then. But the whole point is that you're making a change, and whoever that version is going to make it out just fine. So, falling down in a 100-foot hole is not fun, but climbing out of there is even less fun. But with whatever tools or methods that you have to get yourself out of there, walk away from that problem with triumph, because you just climbed out of a bleak situation, and that is always something to be proud of. Thank you.